is Cassandra. Thank you, Cassandra, for recording this. Is Cassandra Sabo, who is serving as our Zoom facilitator today. She may need to leave the meeting a little bit early, but she'll make me a co-host so that the meeting will continue even if she has to leave. Today, I'm going to share my screen. All right, is that working for everyone?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Today we are going to talk about leading our clubs to success, specifically focused on the club success plan. Please rename yourselves so that Cassandra can take attendance.
Good.
As I stated, I'm Christine Vey. I have been an officer, excuse me, in several different roles and now in 2 different clubs. So I know the officer roles fairly well, and I do enjoy sharing what I know with other people who are trying to make the organization better. So thank you for your service to Toastmasters. Before we get started, club officers really influence the culture of the club and the success of the club. Today, we'll talk about how to start the club success plan. Where do you find it? How do you get to it? What do you put into it? We'll talk about writing and managing a club success plan, and we'll do a little practice on some actions that can be helpful to your club that you'll see as you fill out the club success plan. For the objectives, we're going to talk about the advantages to good planning, how to access, write, and manage the club success plan, and work on developing some documents so that you'll be ready to go with your club success plan or updating your plan if you have one in place. So in the chat, please put in why you think people come to Toastmasters, but hold off on hitting enter, and we'll get a cascading chat, which I think is very helpful. Okay, why don't you go ahead and hit enter? Self-confidence, professional development, practice in public speaking, overcoming fear, improving communication skills, which includes listening, improve speaking ability, self-improvement, fear, build confidence, improve skills to help you advance and impact more people in your own profession, to work on public speaking skills and writing. And yes, mostly to add to their speaking skills. While I've had you do the chat, I do want to ask that no one chats to the whole group during the presentation. There is time built into this for questions. So please don't chat the whole group. It can be very distracting to both the attendees and to me. So thank you. All right. We're going to talk about why clubs should plan. Now, this is a participation moment. Please raise your virtual hand if you have something to say about why clubs should plan. To find your virtual hand, go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen and look for reactions. And then at the bottom of that box is the virtual hand. So please raise your hand and share your thoughts on why clubs should plan. Sabrina?
I think it gives groups or people something to work towards. You know, they have a vision and then can be working towards that.
Thank you. Ah, Kathleen, you found your hand. Yay. Now you have to unmute. You're still muted.
You can't get there if you don't know where you're going. You have to have a plan.
Very good. What's your end game? Thank you. Anatria, sorry.
Perfect. And to piggyback on what was said before, it keeps you on track. A plan does.
Thank you. Ray.
I'm on mute. Okay. You have to plan to make your meeting successful.
Correct. So you have to have a well-planned meeting, but then you also need the overarching plan for the club each year. And you may not have heard this yet, but if your club likes to participate in the Distinguished Club program, which I hope all of you do, the DCP requires certain things to be eligible for it. One of them is that you have enough members. And the other one, starting next year, is going to be that your club wrote a club success plan by September of this year, the next Toastmasters year. So it's important to keep that in mind as we go through this session, because we really do want club success plans in place to help guide the clubs and also for recognition in the future. Anyone else? Okay. Here is the Toastmasters version of why clubs should plan. Where are we now and where do we want to be? So what's the future hold for your club? And where are you helps you figure out how you're going to bridge that gap. The club success plan includes tasks, which include information about what exactly will be happening, when, how, and by who. And planning is a critical task in leadership. Anyone who aspires to move up in their occupation or organization will be noticed if they are able to create a plan and execute a plan. Plans also reduce risk, reduce waste, and provide direction. Now, here we are at the Distinguished Club Program dashboard. Would anyone like to share? First of all, I hope you guys are familiar with the dashboard. And would anyone like to share why Toastmasters has the Distinguished Club Program and why it's important to keep an eye on it? You can raise your virtual hands. Robin.
It's very important to review this plan. First, you've created a plan, but then seeing the goals and seeing them met makes people, I think, highly motivated. I review this in both of my clubs at every meeting so we can see where we are. And it helps everyone to be accountable for the goals that they have said that they plan to give to the club.
Excellent. Thank you. Josh. Oop, Josh disappeared. Oh, there you are, Josh.
No, I'm here. I think that it also provides common metrics across all of Toastmasters. We're all working towards the same objectives, and those objectives are put forward by the larger organization. So it helps us our clubs stay in line with the larger vision of Toastmasters.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else? I really want to emphasize what Josh said about this being metrics. Toastmasters has been around for 100 years. And in that time, they've measured many of a thing. And this is what they've come up with as a way to gauge the health of clubs. You can see up there in the center for the membership, they have the base members and then they have the required members. The required members is what they need to qualify for the Distinguished Club Program's recognition. And this recognition is throughout Toastmasters. All the clubs all over the world use the same metrics for the recognition. And you can see who's speaking needs 20 members. If your base is 15, you'll only need 18 members because the requirement is that you have 3 new to Toastmasters members join your club. And then the end date of this is the end of June. So that's the end of the Toastmasters year. Does anyone have any questions about that part? Raise your virtual hand if you do. Okay, there's more time for questions later if something crosses your mind. Now we're going to move into how to access, write, and manage a club success plan. First thing you do, go to your home. Scroll down to Leadership Central and choose Club Central. Within Club Central, you have Club Management, and there in the middle is Club Success Plan. There are a bunch of badges at the top of this page. I'm not going to go through those today, but those are achievement badges that Toastmasters automatically awards if you do certain things within your club success plan. Here we are in the actual plan. If you look up on the screen, you'll see there's 2 maroon tabs. We're going to focus on the plan today. The action item list is a compiled list of all the actions that you might create in your club success plan. It starts with committee values. Now, when I first started my club success plan for who's speaking, I got a little wrapped around the axle with the values. They provide examples. So if you aren't sure what values you want your club to have or use specifically, don't get stuck there. Use the examples as a placeholder or hopefully incorporating them, and that will help you move forward into the next section because the values may evolve over time and you may want to change them as time goes by. The next section is training. Oh, I'm sorry, administration. And that refers to, that is the last goal in the DCP dashboard. And that refers to getting your club officer list in on time, which is June, no later than June. And we'll talk about these in a little more detail later. But that's and a renewal, getting at least 8 members renewed on time. The next section is training. That refers to officer training. The next section is membership. The next section is education, and that is where every member of the club contributes to the success of this club and by earning education goals. And then the last section is contributing members, which should be all your officers should be involved in writing these. And now we'll dig into each one just a little bit more. So this is the committee values and examples are provided so you can fill them in if you choose to. But how will your executive team work? Will you meet monthly, quarterly, weekly? How will you work? How will you make decisions? Those sorts of things are in this section. Administration, on-time payment of 8 members. That's 1 renewal cycle. We renew in April and October. Ideally, you'll have your 8 in way before the deadline. And if all 7 of your officers renew, then you will get that with just 1 more person. And also, in case you're not sure, you can renew for a whole year. So you don't have to renew just for 6 months. If you know you're going to stay, you can easily renew for 12 months, and that automatically sets the club up for an easier renewal cycle. And then who would be responsible to ensure the officer list is submitted on time? And that's in June. Thinking about strategies and tactics to make this happen is important for every club. So I'm curious to know if anyone would like to share some strategies that their clubs use to be successful in this particular goal. And it's a virtual hand.
Who's the secretary?
Kathleen, are you trying to raise your hand?
Yep.
Okay. Jake.
Yeah, I think our club will send reminder emails when the due dates are approaching, just as a nudge to people who have forgotten.
Absolutely. So who sends that email?
I believe it's the VP of membership,
Okay.
or
So
it could have been
different.
our treasurer, actually.
Yep. In our case, the treasurer does it, but we make sure it happens by, sometimes we have to remind the treasurer to do it. The club officer list can be something that is easy to slip through the cracks, because when your year is wrapping up, it can be an easy thing to forget to do. You should be trying to have your elections in May and then have your officer list in June. I suggest that the president take responsibility for making sure that list gets submitted in June. And that's a hard one, because if you don't make that, you cannot get that goal. There is no retroactive opportunity. You have to get that date to happen. Does anyone have any questions? So here is an idea for an action item. Think about how your club would ensure that the dues are received on time. We're moving into training. So at least 4 officers have to be trained both summer and winter to earn this education goal. And the district has an incentive. If you get both 7 officers trained both summer and winter, each officer gets an officer pin, which is kind of a nice little reward. So thinking about that, you are going to be identifying which officers will attend these training within these timelines, and what are some ways to motivate officers to attend an officer training. So those are it's a place where you can put an action item in. And how will your club ensure that club officers attend training? Does anyone have any ideas? Virtual hand. Sabrina?
We try to, as soon as the dates are announced for when they're coming, the trainings are coming up, just remind the group, the officers right away, so they can plan ahead and not wait till the last minute and realize, oops, I can't get to that final training, just so they have more options to consider when arranging their schedule.
Yes, thank you. Planning ahead part. There were several sessions offered this year. If you have other officers in your club who aren't here, you could remind them to look at the schedule and get themselves signed up. The schedule is also on the district website's calendar. So if you go there, you'll be able to see all of the classes and when they're scheduled. Robin? Thank you, Sabrina. Robin?
I think a good idea is when you find out the dates for WOI, and encourage the whole group to attend. It's really meaningful if you can get your whole officer group to attend. I've seen it happen when I've gone to WLI and SLI, and they sit together and maybe they brainstorm together. It's just a much more meaningful training, and it's a great way to socialize too within your officers and to network.
That's a great idea. That's the Winter Leadership Institute training that she's talking about. That was offered in December. It was in 3 different locations, one for each of the divisions. And attending that as a group would be very helpful. Anyone else? I personally am a fan of the nag, nag, nag approach. If I see one officer who hasn't made it, I will talk specifically to that person and try to get them to attend training, because I happen to enjoy getting a little pin. Okay, so now we're moving into the education part of the plan. And this is one of the more confusing sections, so I'm going to spend some time on this. If you look in the gray box to the right, you will see 4 of 4 with a green check mark. You might be thinking, oh, I already have all 4 of my level 1s completed. Actually, no, you have all 4 of your level 1s planned to be completed. That's the hope. The box that I put the purple box around, the level 1s that are actually completed, is 1 so far. And then the same thing with the level 2s. So if you look where the check marks are, and it gives you every member an opportunity to look at every member, and you'll be able to see, that one's ready to finish level 2, that one level 3. Ideally, they commit to it. Sometimes they might not. You might be volunteering them that's what they're going to do. It really depends on the member. But you'll be able to plan so that you'll have a reasonable idea of how many education awards your club will be able to earn that particular year. I always get all excited when I see the blue checks and forget that that's just planned because they're so bright and lively. The gray checks are the ones that are actually completed. And it's important to realize that that is per member, not necessarily for your club. If you have members that belong to more than one club, their check mark might be gray, but their award might have gone to their other club. So this, we can have kind of an open discussion on this if you'd like. But as you think about how to get club or members motivated, I don't know how everyone is motivated. I do know that I'm motivated by a Triple Crown pin. So I have earned a Triple Crown now for several years in a row, and I appreciate getting the pin. Some members struggle because they feel like they don't have enough time to work on the projects. Maybe they don't know what to do. Maybe their VPE needs to have a conversation with them, or someone have a conversation with them about what assignment are they working on and what's the struggle. Why can't they get it done? Because sometimes they don't have an idea. They just need a little coaching and a little support to move forward with that particular education award level or project. And then we move on to membership. And this starts with these questions. What's the membership? Then this is from the club success plan. What's the membership goal? What's your plan to motivate current members to renew? And what's your club's plan to gain new members? And then you can write action items for that too. And in the last part of this section, we're going to actually write some action items. Now, does anyone have any questions about all that? That is the club success plan in a nutshell and how it relates to the Distinguished Club program. Virtual hands, please. Ah, Sabrina, I see a hand. Oh, now I see it. It's behind the light. Sabrina.
That is tricky. You mentioned before that there were some, I think you said examples or kind of a template to go from when you're filling in the parts. And I was logging in and trying to kind of follow along with you in the plan. But where did you say that you can find the examples of ideas to?
The idea examples are only in the first part where the committee value section is. And there's a way to hover on something and you'll get some thoughts there.
Okay.
But as luck has it, we're going to go through some ideas coming up next.
Okay, great.
Any other questions about the DCP and how the club success plan relates to the DCP? Okay, we'll move on to what they like to call, oh, Robin, yes.
Now, when did you say that the new club success plan will, I know it's in place now because we've done it for both of my clubs, but next year it has to be in by when?
I saw a date that said September 30th.
Okay. And so if we don't have it in by September 30th, then we are not able to do what?
Qualify for the DCP at all.
Okay, no matter whether you have your education awards or not.
Correct. It's going to be a qualifier, much like the membership is. Now, the date, I'm going to be honest, I'm not 100% sure about the date. I saw September 30th in some materials, but I couldn't find it as an official directive anywhere. And I did look, and I even asked, but I didn't get the feedback. So I don't know for sure when it's going to be required. But what I'm hoping at the end of today is you guys will go back and fill out the one you have now. You have access to it now. Even if you haven't started it, you can, so that it's set up and being edited for next year's group instead of created by next year's group. It's a whole lot easier to edit something than start it from scratch. And that's my hope.
So you're sounding like that next year we'll be able just to edit the current plan that we have in. We don't have to start with a fresh new plan.
That's the way it worked for me this year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my understanding. And even if you do have to start a new plan, you'll be using what was in the old plan. You can copy and paste.
Right. Okay. Thank
I'm
you.
not sure technically how the access will work, but having something available is always helpful.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it can be confusing. So if you're confused and you don't know what to do, ask a more senior Toastmaster or your area director or your division director, or even the district leadership when it comes down to that, because we should all be able to help you get that going. Kathleen.
We are a struggling club. As far as I know, we do not have a club success plan. Is there a form that we need to fill out to make one?
Yes. If you go to My Home.
Okay.
And scroll down to Club Management.
Okay.
Choose that. And within that is Club Success Plan.
Okay.
And you'll be able to start it there.
Thank you.
And we are recording this, so the recording will be made available, and that how that looks was included in part of the earlier material. So you'll be able to refresh on that if you're still struggling to find it.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And thanks for asking, because I really want you guys to do this. We all do. We want you guys to do one of these club success plans. We don't want the technology to bog you down and make it so that you can't get it done and you just kind of get frustrated. Don't get frustrated. Ask for help.
That's what we do. Get frustrated.
I know. I did too. It took me a few years to decide I could actually get one of these done. And it has improved over the last few years. So it's much easier technically to use now than it was in the beginning.
So don't give up too soon, huh?
So don't give up too soon. You guys can do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say? Barbara?
How did you say to find, how do you find the member progress tool?
Okay, so that is your path progress. That is part of this education section of the Club Success Plan. Okay. And when you get into that, you'll see all the names and then about where they are. There's more detailed information available in Basecamp.
Oh, there's more detailed information in Basecamp?
Mm-hmm. Like about where they are. But I kind of like this because it gives you which path they're in and then what level they've actually completed.
But you also said something about another club getting credit.
Yes. So if you have a person like me who is a member in 2 different clubs, when I decide to submit an education award, like complete a level, I can choose which club it goes to. And when you look at my name on this, you see I have 2 gray check marks by my name. That means I've completed those 2 levels. And I may or may not have given them to this particular club. It could have gone to the other club. Does that make sense, or is that unclear?
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. It's just one of those quirky little things. So it reports by
Yeah,
the
but
member, not
but
the club.
sometimes it bites.
Yeah. Well, you just don't know what they're going to do. And I would say my personal approach is if I gave all the speeches at one club, I give that club the education award. I don't take it and give it to the other club, even though they might need it. I just make sure I give my speeches to the club that needs the education award.
Right.
Yep. Sabrina.
I wanted to share that a couple of things that we've done recently that seem to help with this, the member progress is one, whenever a member completes a level, we announce it to the rest of the club during the meeting and just kind of celebrate them a bit, just to give others an idea the progress others are making and also give that person some recognition. And then we also like to schedule the speakers for not only the next meeting, but sometimes farther out, including 2 or 3 weeks out. And I think that sometimes helps motivate people to say, oh, I'm not really ready to give a speech next week, but if I sign up, then I'll make sure I make myself start planning for a speech. So I think those things have been helpful.
Yes. And I like the couple of weeks in advance idea, because that makes people realize if they actually want to give a speech, they better schedule themselves, because in that case, the club is kind of competitive. And sometimes there's not enough speaker roles available and we have to push someone to the next week, which is great. I mean, that's what you want. You want people elbowing each other out of the way to give a speech. That's exciting. Arupa, there you are.
Like to second that what Sabrina said. That is really, really motivating. I think for me personally, it really helps.
Now, there are some clubs that use the VPE as to schedule speeches, and that has success for those clubs. So that's another approach to getting people to complete their education awards, is put them on a calendar. And I think that's been fairly successful for those clubs. It's a club by club situation. It's definitely related to the culture of the club. Anyone else? Okay, now we're going to work on developing action plans. And these are going to be scenarios with questions. So as you work through the club success plan, every one of the areas has this. So for example, your goal is membership. You're in the membership part of the club success plan, and you're looking at strategies and tactics, and you have an action item. You can choose the member who's going to be in charge of that action item, start and end date, and then the resources. And I actually find the resources to be super helpful because, for example, I've been asked to host a table at a staff breakfast in March. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to need? Well, I won't need the table, but I will need sign-up sheets. I'll need marketing materials. I'll need to remember the banner, things like that. So I was able to write them down, put all that on my calendar so I don't forget, because getting somewhere at 6:30 in the morning is not my normal schedule. So I'll be a fluster that morning, but I put it all on my calendar so I'll remember what to take. So this is what every one of the sections has as a way to help keep you guys on track so that you can figure out what you're going to do and then make it happen. And it's always open to editing later. So for example, this is a snip from an actual club in District 66. And as you look at that, what do you think the current membership situation might be?
Not good.
Right. Their base was 13. They're down to 11. They need 16. So they need 5 new members to join their club to qualify for the DCP. Now, one thing that might be helpful to them is to figure out how many new members normally join their club every year. And then what are some of the obstacles to achieving its membership goals. So this is part of a situational analysis. Where are you and why are you there, and what's blocking your club from achieving something? So this club is looking to grow 10% beyond the membership requirements. Here is a scenario. We struggle to convert leads to member. We are a club that is known for giving aggressive feedback to help member growth. We think this turns visitors off from joining our club.
Mhm. Yeah.
So this is an open discussion, but I have to ask you to use your hands because I can't see everyone. So what do you think are some potential action items that this club could take to improve this situation? Josh.
I'm keying off the word aggressive. Aggressive
Exactly.
feedback is probably not ideal. Toastmasters is intended to be supportive of growth. And while it's important to be honest and give helpful feedback, not just always positive, even negative or corrective feedback can help a person grow, but should always be delivered in a way that's not considered, I would say, aggressive.
Correct.
So anyway, if the club was able to kind of change their philosophy of how feedback is given, it could prevent visitors from being turned off.
Hoping it doesn't happen to them one day.
Right.
Okay, Robin.
Well, I agree with Joshua, but I think we also need to look at how the VPM is performing their role. Are they following up after meetings? Are they inviting them back? Are they getting another member to contact that visitor? Are they signing up the person right there on the spot in the meeting? I think those are all things that we need to look, but I agree that the word aggressive to me is very offensive. That is not what Toastmasters is about. But I think they also need to look at the VPM and what they're actually doing in the role.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Sabrina.
I agree. The aggressive isn't ideal, but even if the feedback or evaluation might have been a little more constructive or critical, because maybe it was a more experienced member that just gave a speech and needed a bit more in-depth feedback. I don't think it would hurt to just maybe comment to the group, the membership, including the guests afterwards that, okay, we have a more experienced member. You know, if you're starting off with your first icebreaker speech, your feedback won't be like this. We kind of meet every member where they're at, just to, you know, explain that the evaluation and feedback is tailored to meet different member needs.
Yes. Smooth it over during the meeting if you can. Kathleen.
I agree with Robin, but I also think that this club would need to have a training session about what kind of feedback to give and how to give it. Perhaps a cheat sheet listing the sorts of things that should be addressed and not the subject of the speech, for instance, but that's my opinion.
No, that's great. That lends itself to becoming an action item. Hosting an evaluation session so that every member understands what is expected from you as an evaluator. I will say, I have seen the quality of evaluations increase dramatically since the new training offered by Pathways. For those of you that weren't members before, it really was sort of figure it out, use a manual, watch what others do. And if you weren't ever coached on how to evaluate, it could lead to a downward spiral on the nature of evaluations. Either they're always all too nice or they're always all too harsh. And so striking the balance is what's so important. So let's work on this. Let's make this an action item. We would, and Kathleen, I'll have you think this through. We're going to have a session, a training session for members on how to evaluate. Who would be the owner?
Well, someone who is good at evaluating or the VPE, I have in my records various little sheets saying how to evaluate and what to emphasize and what not, how to speak to this speaker. So
Sounds
that
like
was-
you just volunteered yourself and you are the VPE. So perfect. So you're going to own this action item. What would you say would be when you would start and end it? It would be delivered at the same time, right? So it's start and end at the same time, unless you wanted to make it multiple sessions. So how long do you think, and I'm speaking hypothetically, don't worry. How long do you think it would take you to pull something like that together?
I think it would take, in other words, to actually perform it or plan
Yes,
it.
to give it, to do it.
I would think 10 or 15 minutes at the max with a handout,
Okay.
reinforcing the idea that we don't want to turn anyone away. We
Correct.
help people to grow.
And when would you plan it? Like,
Next meeting,
okay, so quickly.
yes, because
So
I've
that's-
heard of someone who quit Toastmasters, one of the clubs, because of harsh evaluations.
Mhm. And I'll be honest, my third speech ever in Toastmasters was such a negative evaluation. It took me way too long to give my next speech. I was so intimidated and it wasn't helpful at all. And it was my third speech. So I had a long way to go. All right, Kathleen. So one last part goes with this action item. What resources would you expect to need to provide for that?
Well, like I say, in my files, I've been a Toastmaster for a while. So in my files, I have several sheets that have been passed out in other clubs recommending how to evaluate and recommending how not to evaluate. So I would use that.
So you have historical resources.
I do.
What about for your meeting itself? Are you all online? Are you in person? Which way are you?
Oh, in person. We don't do online.
Okay. So you would need copies.
Copies. I
Mhm.
have a copier.
Yep. How about pens and pencils?
That's not a bad idea. I assume that people bring them to the meeting. Better to be prepared. That's a good idea.
Right. And maybe projection. Are you able to project or do you want to just do it all on handout?
It'd have to be handouts where we meet.
Okay. So you
Maybe
don't have
some cookies too.
Yeah. Some refreshments,
Yes.
some incentives. And this particular topic might result in quite a bit of discussion. So you might need the whole meeting time to cover this particular topic.
And I would be willing to extend. Yes.
So this is a good example of how you create an action plan, right? Dive all the way in, figure out all the details, and then make it happen. And it's kind of cool because when you can go into the club success plan and say that it's complete. All right, we're moving on to another one. Our club struggles to get guests information and following up with information. So let's think about an action item for this particular situation. What could this club do differently? Robin. Oh, Sabrina. Sorry, Sabrina.
They could keep a designated guest book and have any visiting members or any visiting guests write down their information in there and then designate a member, I would think the VP membership, to follow up within a certain time frame after they visit the meeting.
Yes. Robin?
All right, so I have two different meetings that I have from clubs, and totally online and one that's hybrid. What I do as VPM and as also as president is we keep a electronic Excel file of all of our visitors. That way we're able to continuously email them about our next meeting and also keep, columns to see when they came, when they responded, when they joined, that sort of thing. That's that's what I do. But I think you need to determine how you're going to reach out to your guests. I also have prepared emails that I keep in a Word document file. So for somebody who just visits the first time, somebody who wants to join, but now we also have that new prospective member tab within Club Central, what we just got, that will send you the Toastmaster leads that you can react there, and then you're now found that you can even send them a once they've come, you can send them the membership application. So that makes it a lot easier. And then you've got Free Toast Host. If you use Free Toast Host, you get, if that's updated, you'll get leads that way. But we've been still keeping our own electronic files.
Yes, I think it's important to keep in mind that those systems are independent, so they don't synchronize and link up. It still requires a human to be involved. Jana.
As soon as our people come into the meeting, we ask for contact information to be put into the chat. We have virtual meetings so that we have an email address for the new person. Because sometimes they come and go without us getting contact information.
Yeah.
But we also update Free Toast Host with our prospects list.
Oh, right. Right. Yes, thank you. So Free Toast Host has some tools to help with that. And Toastmasters has introduced the other prospective member tool, which I find useful. Our club is a little less sophisticated, and we just have a giant email list that we started during COVID just to make sure we didn't miss anyone. And so we email everyone all the time, once a week, with our, well, when our meetings are, that includes the agenda and who's doing what. And that way, everyone who's ever thought they might be interested in the club is continuously contacted until they ask to be stopped. The other thing is sometimes if the VPM's not in attendance, this function can slip through the cracks. Ideally, the VPM tells someone or asks someone to cover for them, but they may not. So I think that's on the president to try to make sure that the VPM gets that contact information, or someone is getting it to the VPM. We don't want that visitor to slip through the cracks. And it can happen when they come late, or it can be awkward. So we just want to make sure we keep track of that person, regardless of who does it. Someone needs to do it. And by definition, it is the VPM's responsibility, but they need to have a substitute if they're not going to make it. All right. So what would be an action item? I would say, let's pick for an action item, reviewing the contents of the visitor email. So Robin, I'm going to ask you to help with this one. So we have a member reviewing, let's just say you're working with a different club. Let's say you're coaching a club, Robin, and you want to make sure they are responding to visitors in an appropriate way. We're going to call the action item, review the response email to a visitor. Okay. So we'll make you the owner. And how long do you think something like that would actually take? And you have a template. So that's awesome. So how long would you expect?
Well, Toastmaster asks us to respond to any visitors within 48 hours. So I would say
Yes.
you need to do it 48 hours from when the first initial contact through the email, or unfortunately, sometimes we don't see them. We need to do it as quickly as we can because we don't want to lose them.
Yes. And you want to know what's going in that email, because they give you guidance, but they don't give you exactly what to write. So you have to make sure it's a comprehensive email that helps the visitor make it back. And I would say maybe 2 weeks to figure out what's in that email, revise the email, etc. You don't need many resources and materials because that's like a Word document. Like Robin said, she uses a Word document. And then links maybe to certain things. If they visited twice or once, maybe they're ready for the link to the icebreaker so they can see how the training actually looks before they commit to joining. Thank you, Robin. All right, here's the next scenario. We rely on word of mouth marketing, but we need to look beyond that now. So this is ripe with potential ideas for action items. Would anyone like to share a thought? E?
Oh, yes. Well, with this day of age and everybody has a social media, maybe start a social media page for the club, like an IG or Facebook or whatever. Well, that's that's the first thing I can think of right now, right out of on top of my head.
Yes, thank you. One caution about starting a Facebook page. My club has 2 of them now. The person who started it moved away. The second person who started it moved away, and we have no login credential to either update it or kill it. So it's a good idea. I think it may fill a niche for clubs, some clubs, but also needs to be managed for the long term and not just as some short-term project that some member does. Thank you, E. Robin?
To avoid that situation, we sign in through our club's email. So like, for example, Midtown Toastmasters, we have an email account, and that's how we use our Facebook page. But I would also recommend, at least for the people that are in Richmond, we have our Richmond area Toastmasters meetup, which has been very successful. In fact, one of our clubs, Step to Success, just got 6 visitors last Saturday and was able to sign all of them as members. So
oh, wow.
That's Marilyn Vaughn was saying last night in a meeting that's like a miracle.
That is like a
I've
miracle.
never had that to happen. I've had that many visitors, but you can also use Eventbrite. You can use LinkedIn. Those are all things you have to start though, and they have to be managed. And you can also post on the district website. On the district Facebook page.
Yes. For you, if you don't know, the district does have a private group and also a public facing group. So it's a good way to see some things that are of interest to clubs. And Erica, nice to meet you virtually, Erica. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'll make one comment first on the Facebook page, which you were talking about. I totally agree with you. That happened when I was involved in California. But I think the key is always to have someone else, even if they're not actively involved in posting on the page. If you have like somebody you know is going to be there, forever, a long period of time, to have them, make them an administrator, even if they're not acting, because you can have several administrators on a Facebook page. Anyway, my comment regarding besides word of mouth is that we've also had some success this past year and working more on that with a radio interview and a television interview on a local TV station, a talk show type segment. We're going to be pursuing an article in our local newspaper, but those things are just one hits. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if it's an item where you have a link, something appeared online, you can then share that out, and that gives you like that third-party validation that you've been covered in the media. But it's not going to be something like Meetup or a Facebook page where you can continue to post on it all the time. I would love to know more, if this is an appropriate forum to ask, if Robin could share more about Meetup, because our club used to use that, and I think you have to pay for it, and we haven't looked into doing that yet.
Well, I would probably defer to Christine because she's our district's public relations manager, but you do have to pay for it. But in Richmond area Toastmasters, we have all the Richmond clubs like bundled together in a meetup. So notices go out for each club that wants it each time they're meeting. And we can definitely see there are visitors. I mean, sometimes the visitors we have gotten, at least for my clubs, sometimes they're quality visitors and they turn into members. Sometimes they're not so quality. They're looking to Zoom bomb you.
So
But
Erica, I'll take that topic offline with you later because I do know about the meetup on the western half of the state.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm glad you asked about it because there are numerous avenues for clubs to try to find people. One of the things I started doing before COVID was I created some flyers for the Charlottesville clubs, and I would go to the job fairs and the small business fairs. And at the job fairs, I wouldn't be talking to the applicants. I would talk to the people who were at the table. I didn't have a table. Me and my flyers went around and talked to the people at the tables. So I found that even though it didn't result in particularly hefty responses for potential members, it does help raise the profile of Toastmasters. And that is always a goal. And just so you know, in the website, in the District 66 website, I've added some tip sheets in the resources that cover things like an elevator pitch and how to approach traditional media, which is what Erica did very successfully for Harrisonburg. And I put a third one in there, but I can't remember what that one's about. But anyway, there's resources around. Toastmasters does have a brand manual that we should be using for colors and fonts and things like that. But there's ways to advertise us and what we do outside, in addition to word of mouth, which I actually find to be a very effective means of recruiting members, but it's not the only way, and it's not always a successful way. Anything else before we move on? Okay, now we're moving into education. And this again is an open discussion. Members get through education, but slowly. They seem more focused on participation in meetings than completing their paths. Anyone have thoughts on how this could be addressed as a club for the club success plan? Erica?
We haven't done it yet, but our club has discussed having like education moments where especially some of the newer members can just be guided through. Because sometimes people they need, like you showed us earlier today in one of the plans, and you have it pointing to something on the website. Sometimes people just need a little bit of that extra visual or that little bit of encouragement. So we have talked about having, not every meeting, maybe once a month, having this education moment that will help guide people towards using all the resources that are available and advancing through their pathways.
Thank you, Erica. Just for your information, a few other clubs use that time and they call it Dr. Toastmasters. It's a way to build it into the agenda for just a couple of minutes with some kind of a tip. Can be related to pathways, can be related to speaking, can be anything we decide to make it. But I really like the Dr. Toastmasters idea personally. I stole it. Josh.
Yeah, I was just going to second that. Our club definitely does that. Our VPE, Sabrina, does that regularly, acknowledging folks that are working through their paths. And then recently, our club got on the levels. And so I called that out in front of the entire club, which gives them a sense of how their individual education contributes to the overall club advancement.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. Robin?
I think there's two things you can do. One, as a VPE, you could meet with those members personally that are not moving through their paths to see if they have a problem, to see if they understand how to actually use pathways. Maybe they're not going through the whole thing, so they're not getting their check marks. The second thing my clubs have done are speak-a-thons, where instead of having all your regular roles, you just have a Toastmaster and a timer and evaluators. And at my last Advanced Leadership Club meeting, we had a speak-a-thon with, I think it was 6 speeches and 6 evaluations. So that we did not have any table topics.
Right. Robin's point about going back into pathways to earn your green check mark is possibly a real obstacle. And I found I had trouble with it myself. So when you give a speech, you have to go back, finish it off in pathways so that you'll get the green check mark, and then you can move forward. And it's not intuitively obvious. So we need to remind members every time they give a speech to go back into pathways and close it out. Sabrina.
Yeah, to that point, that's why it's important to track through Free Toast or however your club does it, what speeches members are giving. Because when I go in to the dashboard and I see that, okay, this member has, completed level 1, they don't have the check mark for completing level 2, but if I can go back and see that, oh yeah, they've actually completed all those speeches for level 2, they just haven't checked it off through their pathways, then I can, touch base with them and specifically remind them, oh, you completed this already, you've got it done. Make sure you go back and officially complete it so you can get the credit for it.
Thank you. One action item that clubs could take if they don't already is to provide a version of an orientation to the club and to pathways. And VPEs are usually responsible for that. They can choose their frequency and how often they do it, but helping them, making sure new members especially understand everything, but also the prior members, because things have changed a lot in Toastmasters, especially over the last couple of years. And so a member who's been around for a while, but hasn't necessarily been all that plugged in, might go in and find things to be so different they don't know what to do. And then they get frustrated and then they give up. So having information available and making sure that everyone knows who to talk to if they have questions is very important. And that could easily be written into an action item for the club success plan. Okay. So here's another scenario. Members give great speeches, but focus their speeches on subjects that are not within their path and often do not address their chosen path at all. This one can be tricky. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? Josh?
Yeah, I think this can be caused by 2 things, at least 2 things. One is they're not really engaging with pathways, so whether that's intentional or not. So making sure that they understand pathways and getting them re-engaged with it. The other is that they may have chosen the wrong path. And that helping them align with a path that they're actually more interested in could be a way of, all right, let's step away from this current path you're going, or at least signed up for, align you with the path that you're actually engaged with, and then you can bring those 2 in alignment.
That's a good point. Rupa?
I would add to what Josh said. I think familiarity with the website is a big challenge on that. Sometimes people don't even look at website much on that. So I think education in that part would be very helpful.
Yep. One of the things I made in my notes about this is that this could be a club culture. You can have a club that starts to drift away from using pathways, and to kind of bring it back, a subtle way is to always include the path and the project, that the person is working on when they're introduced. And that's what Blue Ridge does. We have the evaluator introduce the speakers, but we make sure we specify which path they're in and what assigned project they're working within that path. And if it's mentioned that they're working in not a pathway assignment, there should be an explanation as to why. So it should be the presumption that they are working in pathways except by particular exception. And really, in almost every situation, you can find some project in pathways that what they're doing does apply to, and they can skip around. It's not recommended for newer members, but particularly more experienced members, they can jump ahead if they need to. And another thing I've found is that sometimes people get to level 4 or 5 and it just kind of gets to be all too much and they hit that roadblock. And if that's the case, they can have, you can talk to them and try to make sure they know what they're going to do for that level 4 or level 5 project, but they can also open a new path and restart a level 1. Those are all fun, and make progress and still give speeches without necessarily waiting until they're ready for their harder project. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? Here, oh, Jake, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking we could also incorporate that feedback directly in the evaluation for the speech on how well or not well they address their actual pathway.
Yes. And on most of the evaluation forms, if you look for the thing that's circled, that will help you on the one that has all the numbers on that sheet that has all the numbers and the criteria. The ones that are circled are the specific ones related to the particular project they're doing. And I find that kind of useful too. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. The most active members take up most of the spots, and there are not many other opportunities. How might this be addressed? Rupa?
I think this can be addressed in a team meeting where we have, especially managers are in the meeting. At least they can discuss among themselves and suggest, like, at least we can step back a little when new team members are there and have them pick up the roles, major roles when it comes to the signing up for the next meeting.
So these are for speakers. So yes, if your executive committee is taking all the roles, that's not a good idea. Thank you. Yeah. And also, Rupa alluded to this. We fill out our agenda at Blue Ridge and who's speaking the week at the end of the meeting. So for the next meeting, we usually have a full agenda. You can find some overly enthusiastic, longer term members who don't let the new people volunteer or ask. Sometimes you have to ask them to volunteer, but it's important to keep that in mind as you're filling out the agendas. You want those newer people to be doing the roles as soon as possible before they give their icebreaker. And that can be managed by the VPE. Different clubs do it different ways, but it's something to be mindful of. Robin.
All right, I think as the VPE, you have to make sure that you engage your newer members and find space in the meeting for them to speak. So create either an additional speech, maybe eliminate table topics, or again, you could have that speak-a-thon where I've have had like what I call Icebreaker Monday, where if you have a lot of new members, do a speak-a-thon where they're all doing their icebreakers. Because if you don't get those new people engaged right away, they're not going to progress. But we have to make sure that we temper those that are super enthusiastic seasoned members to allow these new people to be able to speak.
Yes. And Atria?
Absolutely, Christine and Robin, and I would say as VPE to continue to find ways to engage the new people And as well as to make an announcement that we want to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to participate, because it's all about everyone progressing forward in their pathway. So encouraging that engagement across the board.
Thank you. Rupa?
There's another thing I remember just now, speaking with one of our Toastmasters. They are not aware of that they can pick up the Toastmaster role. They thought they have to have like certain level they have to complete to pick up that role. And that was like really surprising to me. So I think education in that way would be really helpful.
Okay, thank you. Erica.
Yes, good morning. I just wanted to ask, I heard that someone said, I think it was Anitria. I'm sorry if I messed up your name, but some names are backwards, some are forwards. About about Icebreaker Mondays. So my question is, we don't always have to follow the typical Toastmasters agenda as far as, doing the listen up, the table topics, 1, 2 speeches. I know sometimes we'll eliminate one thing and do 3 speeches, or do 1 icebreaker and 2 speeches. So it's okay to deviate from that. And if so, are there any other suggestions that anyone else does?
So I'll answer that, Erica. And it was Robin who mentioned that. But yes, the club owns your agenda. You make it be what you want it to be. Every speaker needs to have a Toastmaster evaluator, but that's it. So ideally, you're having table topics, but you might not have time for that. Ideally, you have a word of the day. You might not have time for that. Ideally, you have a counter. You might not have time for that. But so you can flex that schedule any way you like. And if you use a tool like Free Toast Host, you can automatically change the minutes and add and delete agenda items. Robin, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, when I said Icebreaker Monday, what I'm talking about is you're still having speeches. Maybe you're just having 3 icebreakers, because the camaraderie of new members being able to speak versus being behind a seasoned speaker, it might make it easier for them to have that courage to speak. And then the evaluators are going to be people that are going to be constructive, but yet very kind and understanding, because this is their first speech.
Robin mentioned something that we really like to try to do, and regardless of who's speaking, and that's always give the icebreaker the first speaking role, so that they are not coming behind someone else and they have less time for their nerves to all kick in. One other thing I thought of regarding this, where you have too many people who are seasoned and want to speak, is that you talk to them and have them be the backup speaker. It is not unheard of to have a speaker decide at the last minute they can't do their speech. Well, then that person who wants to give a speech can give their speech and substitute easily. Anyone else? Jake?
Yeah, I know in our club, we don't necessarily foster this intentionally, but we do suggest to each other or request that each other, make room. Like if you're working on a certain project, we'll just email that person and say, hey, I have a speech that I need to give for this project. Can I take your spot? And then that happened to me last week, and I just switched my role and it was no problem. But
yes,
that only works if people have each other's emails and phone numbers, and that there's sort of an expectation that that's okay.
Yes, thank you. And the other thing is, be careful if you're working with someone who's in a 4 or 5, especially level 5, because a lot of those assignments are 20-minute speeches, and they can wreck your timing if you're not aware of it until after you've already committed those slots to other speakers. So it's just something to keep in mind as you manage your agendas. Erica.
Actually, I have one of those long things coming up. And one way, especially since those are probably members that have been in the club for a little while, is that you could, and sometimes people move on to a different pathway and they come back to that big long one, is to give your VPE just a heads up for planning so that they know then when to slot it. And you can work that out based on mutual schedules.
Yes, absolutely. Pre-planning and communicating really helps that make that successful. All right, so we finished with the scenarios. As you work on creating your club success plans, it's a good idea for the group, the executive team, to figure out their planning process and the best practices that they want to incorporate as they move forward. Are there any questions regarding the session? Anything you heard? Virtual hands, please. Okay. Oh, Erica.
It's not so much what I heard, but as you were talking about the various ways to, I guess, interest new members, we always ask members how they heard about us. And by and large, Google is the largest reason, like somebody's told them of, or a professor, because we're in an area with like 4 colleges. So a lot of times people, they were like, yeah, I'd heard of it. And so they find the website or they find the Facebook page, but usually it's a Googling thing. But I thought that would be interesting. I'm not one for all types of metrics, but I think that would be interesting at the end of the year, is to know how each person, the stats of this many people Googled, this many people were invited by a friend. Those would be really, I think, very interesting stats.
I've been hearing more and more that I heard about it on a podcast. My newest member and who's speaking said, I read on Reddit that I should give a speech and just jump right on in. Would you agree with that? So it's everywhere, everything. Tracking it, yes, that would be a great idea. I have yet to find people who are willing to track all that, but I think it's a good question and it's a good idea. And mostly I like to react to what we hear. So if we hear they Googled it, go to your website and make absolutely sure it's up to date. Make sure you look like you are alive and not some club that might have met 2 years ago but doesn't meet now. So what we do on Who's Speaking, and I think Blue Ridge does it too, is we put, here's our next meeting, who's a little bit about it, and make sure the directions are correct and everything is up to date. We struggled years ago with our membership, and lo and behold, it turned out the emails were going to an email address that nobody was monitoring. Our directions were wrong. We had it in the wrong place. Nobody had updated it. So it's a really good practice, at least once a year, to look at your website like an outside person would and make sure they see what they need to make their way to their meetings. Some people aren't going to tell you they're coming. They're just going to walk in because they were able to find it. And so that's one of the things I'm really an advocate for, is to make sure your website is up to date, welcoming, helpful, and is inviting so that people want to come visit your group. Thank you, Erica. That was one of my hot button topics. And so that could be an action item for membership. Check and update the website. Give yourself 3 weeks to get it done, 4 weeks to get it done, and do it. So today we've looked at how to start the club success plan, how to manage the club success plan, and you can go in and update your action items at any time. That's the other maroon tab that's available on your club success plan sort of landing page. And we worked through a few simulations with ideas. Now, I hope after this, you will finish your club success plan for your club this year in anticipation of next year. If you already have a club success plan, go back and revisit it and create new action items and update any ones that need to be updated. And Barbara.
Sorry.
It's okay.
What you said this would be recorded. Can you tell me how we could get to the recording?
We're going to email it out to you afterwards. You know, it takes a few days to process it, but there'll be an email.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Last chance for questions. It was great to see all of you guys. I hope you learned something today. I really hope you'll go back and work on your club success plan and have it ready for your next year's leadership group. I would like to thank Cassandra for being our Zoom facilitator today. That's awesome. And if there's no more questions, I will wrap it up. It was very nice to see all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Christine.
Yes.
Thank you.